all my devices reset because I have moved house since the last show, so now you should be able to hear me. Don't shout at me. I caught myself this time before it happened. Anyway, welcome to this evening's episode of Mapping It Out, where we go behind the scenes for all of the wonderful pieces of software that we love using from DungeonFog. We're talking about Battlemap Editor and, of course, Project DEIOS. Now, we start the show with Battlemap Editor, and then towards the middle of the show, we switch over to DEIOS. So stick around, folks. There's some really exciting stuff coming up for both of those different categories. When we talk about Battlemap Editor, it is 2023, which means we are in a new year, which means new things can happen, new, very, very exciting things. So I'll be joined by Till as usual, and he's going to be taking us through some of the cool stuff that you can see and expect to see from the Battlemap Editor for 2023. Now, we also will be looking at some new allies and cooperatives that will be happening throughout the year, as well as, of course, a new asset pack, which we can make use of. It's an interesting one. And, of course, Community Spotlight, which has changed its spots from 2022 to 2023. So we'll be finding out more about that towards the rest as we go through the show. Now, if you have a question, and I know that there is already some questions that have gone up, and I will be asking them as soon as I can, please put the word question in caps in front of your question so I can see exactly the question in amongst all of the rest of the chat, because we've got very chatty people tonight, which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And we'll get to answering that. Now, that is it from me, except for one last thing, which is we're streaming to both YouTube and Twitch, and the chat bot is sending those chats backwards and forwards. So if you see some chats coming from somewhere and you don't know where they are, they're coming from the other streaming platform. So let's get Till in and see what's happening. Till, welcome. How you doing?
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm doing fine. It's the end of January. Can I still say Happy New Year to everyone? I think I can. I'll do it. Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all crossed over into the new year happily, well rested, and ready for this new year, which hopefully gets amazing for all of you.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Year of the Rabbit, very auspicious year as well, depending on which New Year's you look at. Till, what was your biggest highlight from 2022? Just quickly.
Just quickly. Oh, which means I cannot list them all. Okay. I think from the Battlemap Editor, definitely the asset picker, the new asset picker, and with that along the, I think, also kind of the performance boost that came with it. There are now thousands of assets in the library, and loading them, especially accessing them with the old asset picker, was already quite the pain in the, you know what I mean. But that one was definitely one of my highlights from Project DEIOS. I think the honestly, there were so many things, like the tectonics. I think they were really cool. But one of the small things that we did by the end of the year was pixel perfect selection. And that is so beautiful, because before that, we used a rectangle, like from the file that we're importing. There is kind of an invisible rectangle around it. And we just took that as the area that you can select. But now it goes down onto the pixel. So when you select an asset, you get it by the pixel that you selected. And that was such a convenience improvement. Apart from that, of course, personally, the book. It was the first time that I was involved into a book writing process, and you took me under your shelter, and you aided me there. So writing a book was also one of the big highlights for me from last year.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's been a wonderful process so far. Now, if you don't know what book we're talking about, it is The Creator's Guide to Creating Awesome Locations.
Epic
awesome locations?
locations.
Epic locations? Awesome locations? Epic locations?
Well,
I can never remember it.
No, I know, because it working title was Awesome Locations, and we renamed it.
Epic locations. Anyway, that book was on Kickstarter. Kickstarter closed. We're busy finishing it off as we speak. Very, very exciting stuff there. Okay, Till, some questions from chat. Damien the DM says, what was your favorite Christmas gift to receive during the holiday break?
Oh, I hope my wife's
Can you
not
think
watching.
back that far?
Yeah, it's like, oh my god. I know. I think it was a birthday present though. Was Scotland Yard the Moriarty edition? That was brilliant.
That's a board game?
It's a board game, yeah. And for Christmas, so there are two things I have to say. First of all, my family is wonderful unless they don't know the difference between that they're not part of the fandom. So they're constantly sending me or gifting me with Star Wars stuff, which is fine, but I'm more Trekkie. So every year I'm like, can you please maybe something from Star Trek? And they're like, yeah, sure, here. And then it's, I don't know, it's Jar Jar Binks. And I'm like, oh, thank you very much. So for the first time, they actually managed to gift me a little model of the Phoenix from Saffron Cochrane.
Nice.
First warp driven starship, which was amazing. Thanks to Isabel, by the way. She kind of pointed it and said, that's something for Daddy. And also, they finally understood that they can make me happy with D&D stuff. So I got some dice, I got this amazing mug, and no, I'm super happy.
There you go. Fantastic. What a great question. Elias Venieri asks, are there any news or a sneak peek about cities on DEIOS? Well, all I can say is that DEIOS is coming up in about half an hour, and it's pretty much only on cities and demos about cities and news about cities and updates about cities and very, 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 very exciting stuff about cities. So keep watching.
Yes.
Okay, let's get into the news. Music, if you please, Till.
Sure. Wait,
There's
where's
no
the animation? Hey!
There's the animation.
Battlemap News! So new!
Sorry, I jumped the gun and clicked on the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, so talking about DungeonFog news, let's start with the roadmap, Till.
Yeah, sure. It's the beginning of the year, so we need to look at what are we planning to do this year.
Now, before we get to it, the roadmap for 2023, how much of it is a map and how much of it is a wish list?
Whoa, that's a mean question, guy. Well, okay, so I think it was 2021 when we actually said that it is a goals list, which means that we are putting things on there that we want to achieve more than like that we are super confident that we can all really finish off. So as always, when you start planning, you know that the first quarter you're kind of on spot because that is within 3 months when you look at your sprint board and you know the task, you're like, okay, we're pretty confident that we can do this unless something breaks and we are suddenly pushed back. For the second quarter, which is then suddenly looking into the future for half a year, it already gets a bit vague. Because so much depends on that you can finish your stuff in the first quarter. And for the rest of the year, it's basically tea leaf reading, where you're like, okay, we would like to do that. If we get there in time, we can actually do it. I'm wandering off the screen. I'm sorry. You asked the question. I'm like, okay, I'm out.
I'm going away.
So we actually changed the approach a little bit, like the visual representation, to make it easier to understand what is plannable and what is like long-term goals. And especially for this year, when we go into it, we have a massive task in front of us for the Battlemap Editor that isn't even fully plannable at the moment. And we need to learn more about the technologies and how they work for us.
Okay, sounds fair. Let's have a look at the roadmap.
Yes, sir. Okay, there you go.
Walk us through.
So short term, which is planned for Q1 and Q2. So that is the part where we say, okay, that is still plannable for us. We have our kind of roadmap for this. We have our sprint boards for that. We know, we have our estimates, so we know where we're going. And the first one sitting there is the rework of the asset manager. Now, last year we did the asset picker, which is the little tool bar that pops open when you want to select and place a prop or a texture or a token. But there is, in DungeonFog, there is this asset manager section that technically should, or it does, but it doesn't do it very good, allow you to structure and organize all your assets in your personal way, with collections and having presets and copying presets over. So in preparation for V6, where we actually need to test out some of the technologies that we want to use for V6, we said, okay, we need a test project. We need something that we can play around with. And it would be a waste if we're doing that with something that we can't put back into DungeonFog or into the Battlemap Editor. So we said, okay, let's look at how would you organize, structure, and plan your assets in a way, which means the assets through the content subscription, the assets that you have purchased through the marketplace or that are available on the marketplace, and of course the assets that you upload yourself. What's a modern way to organize them, and how can we make that happen? And also we said, okay, what if we find a way to pull that, like to make it available through the Battlemap Editor, but also outside of the editor itself, which is, again, something that we want to do, where we want to emphasize more on in V6. I'm looking at running campaigns. I'm looking at writing GM notes, where you probably want to start outside of the editor, and then bring in things when you're working with the editor. And so we're testing a few new technologies here, and we are currently, we're past the concept phase, we're in the prototyping phase, we're almost through the prototyping phase. I just got a very interesting ping today from Andy, which was, success, I finally made it, because he was fighting against the windmill. And so we're making progress there. And we hope that by the end of Q1, start of Q2, we are ready to hand out the asset manager. Alongside with that, we can see that you guys love the community hub. There is so much going on there, and we are super happy with it. So we are just looking at the community hub and kind of fine adjust, add some features, add some stuff, make it easier to use, easier to find suggestions when the tool itself suggests new maps to you. And we got your feedback. You don't really like the way we theme, like we categorize maps by themes. So we are revisiting that and are looking at better ways to do that. And lastly, that is also in parallel, that's not dependent on the asset manager or the community hub, is the marketplace. The marketplace is constantly growing thanks to Forgotten Adventures and Kiora and oh, my brain is leaving me, and all the other amazing artists who put stuff in there. But we are now growing it, starting promoting it a bit more, making it more kind of upfront that people understand that there is a marketplace, and we're inviting new artists there. The only thing that involves Andy's work in that regards is the last tiny thing that sits there on the marketplace, and that is map packs. At the moment, the marketplace can only provide assets or tokens, but it doesn't provide finished maps. And therefore, we have something in preparation that we want to do this year that allows artists to sell map packs together with tokens, and also probably the first DungeonFog artists, like DungeonFog users, to create map packs and potentially sell them through the marketplace itself.
Interesting.
It is. Long-term now gets like in the future, and we know that we have to do some Battlemap Editor updates. There are just things that need to be addressed and tackled, and we are currently evaluating what of those things should be done this year, what of those things should be done as part of V6, so the V6 renderer and the Flutter UI you can see there. And then there are just some other things that popped up last year that we want to tackle, which is, for example, we've been approached by a few universities who said it would be amazing if we could have team licenses for our classes. That is actually something that our system cannot handle at the moment. So we're going to look a little bit into that. And the rest is marketplace improvements and backend and services.
So much cool stuff there. We're going to unpack quite a bit of it. But with the map packs, for example, where you're saying DungeonFog users could create maps, put them up onto the market, potentially sell those maps, generate some income. Are we kind of seeing like a, hey, pay for your own subscription by just releasing map packs? So it's a...
It's a bit, look, yeah, potentially yes, but it is something that we were going to investigate very slowly, because it's not a sign up and create an account and start selling system. It is curated, which means that if you are someone who is producing, probably through Patreon already, constantly maps or map packs and is really an artist who's creating more and more maps, then we might be approaching you and say, hey, would you be interested in selling some of those map packs on the marketplace? However, and to be honest, this is open for discussion. We internally haven't decided on that yet. My personal, what I do not want is that it starts to cannibalize on the community hub, because the idea behind the community hub is that everyone does maps, and if they like them, they share them. And if we get the feeling that selling map packs might have an influence on that, then we might push back a little bit and wait on it. But I know that there are, for example, that there are occasions where it's really about probably an adventure that you want to sell, and you want to also, you don't want to hand out the maps for free because you're selling the adventure on Drive-Thru or DM's Guild or wherever. So you want to have an opportunity to say, okay, here you can buy them and here you can get them on DungeonFog. So that's the space of thought that we're in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I could also see that in those map packs, you could probably include your GM notes.
Yep.
And all those kinds of things. So integrated type of thing.
Yeah.
That's very exciting, I think. Very, very exciting. Stage textures is mentioned coming up. And when we were speaking earlier about putting the show together, I was like, wait, what are these stage textures you speak of? They sound amazing. I want more of them. Just talk to us a little bit about stage.
It is actually related to the map packs. So right now, when you create a map and you want to upload your own background image, we haven't decided yet on the proper naming of the thing, so we're calling it stage textures at the moment. But what you want to do is you want to have a big image that probably just by the size of the image itself defines the stage size. So your process to get there is create a new map, create an empty map, or create a map from image, and you pick an image, and at that moment, you get that image baked into the stage, and then you can place assets on top of that image, which again means for artists like for Forgotten Adventures or Keora or whoever's on the marketplace, that they can combine that they can say, okay, here's a map pack that comes with stage images and decorational objects, so you don't have to draw the whole terrain, for example, for yourself, but you just have the ready-made terrain, and then you just decorate it to what you need. And the reason why we're calling it stage textures is because we are looking at ways to probably make them seamless, so that even if you resize the map, it doesn't just break off, but it probably repeats itself. But we're talking about big images and not the 1000 by 1000 pixel textures that we have that are kind of seamlessly repeating, but more like one stage, one image, start decorating.
Yeah, I do like that. You can just make a field or a hill.
Yeah, exactly.
Make this image, and then boom.
Yeah. So
now
Tony,
I can add walls over it and all that kind of stuff.
So while we already know that some of the artists in our marketplace are already prepped for that, like they have those stage images that they would like to see implemented. Tony and I have already started on our own process of understanding, drawing, experimenting with what would be the best approach to make that work and to make it as flexible as possible. So it's long-term, which means that it most likely will not show up in the first half of the year. But it is something that we just want to dive into and make it happen as soon as possible.
I like that. Another thing that's on the long term is doors and windows. This has also been a bugbear of mine, folks, for a very long time. Until knows it.
I know also from the feedback that you're sending us. We have that feedback area where you can send us suggestions.
And that's on the Discord, is that correct?
No, that's on the website, and I think it's. I'm sure someone will post the link in a second. I think it's dungeonfog.com/suggestions. I think that's where you find it. There you can not only submit suggestions, but you can uprank and downrank suggestions from other people. I think you can only uprank them or remove your vote. You cannot downrank other people's votes. And it is high on the list. I mean, I think we've been talking since 2021. We've been talking about the fact that we want to do doors and windows and rework it. And the only reason why it constantly gets pushed back is because it would be so much more convenient to do it with V6. Because there we have to rework the walls model anyways. But there is currently a discussion going on internally where we are saying, okay, V6 will take a long time until it's really developed. So maybe we should do it beforehand and then have it off the table. We'll have to redo it for V6 because we cannot use the full code completely for V6. But at least we would finally have that off from our delivery table.
Yeah, and some chance to experiment and see what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so you keep talking about V6, and what is this? Is it a major shift? What's the difference? We have a slide, don't we?
No, I've removed it. I'm sorry. I thought
we had a slide.
I had a slide. Do we still have it? I can't remember. No, I put it away. I didn't want to. So we will talk about V6 a lot more. In the future. In a nutshell, it means that we are reworking the renderer. We're basically switching technology to a newer technology, which is WebGPU from WebGL to WebGPU, which means the renderer will be better. It will affect lighting. It will affect performance, drawing speed, we have, when you adjust a lot of light source, you get that flickering while you work on it. That should be gone then. And there are other things like multi-select that just weren't baked into the framework when we started DungeonFog in the first place. And that would be another major thing that would change. And on top of that, we want to switch to a better UI system, because the way that the UI is handled at the moment is not ideal to hand it to someone else. So basically it bottlenecks down on Andy's capacities, because if we need to change the UI, it's Andy. If we need to change something on the renderer, it's Andy. So we're trying to kind of unravel those things into ways where we can say, okay, Andy is doing renderer, Ferret is doing user interface, and long story short, that is a massive endeavor, and we're a bit afraid of it, to be honest. It's such a long-term planning that we said, okay, we want to test most of the technology beforehand by doing shorter, smaller projects like the asset manager, and then once we are certain and we feel safe, then we will switch over. But it will most likely take a year and a half to actually do all the work.
Now, DungeonFog has thank you to Forecaster for throwing up into chat the dungeonfog.com/suggestions, where you can go and do all your suggesting and upvoting. Now, DungeonFog has always been about community, in the sense of the community hub, in the sense of being part of the community, the map challenges, all of those things are designed to build community. But, and a lot of you might not know this, DungeonFog also does a lot within the professional community and within the space of working with other people, myself included. We're collaborating, writing books and all that sort of thing. So Till there is somebody new who's joining the group of artists.
Yes. So I think, I mean, we're at the end of the month, so it's not going to be in January. But it's in February. We have a new artist joining. I'm super proud of him. It's the Mad Cartographer. They have brilliant maps. They're in the process of breaking those maps and all the assets that they have on them onto the maps down into asset packs. If I remember correctly, there are thousands of assets that they have already in stock. So we are basically there. I know that tomorrow I have my training with them. We're doing an onboarding, how to upload the stuff in the FogMS, how to categorize, how to sort, organize, and so on and so forth. Once that onboarding is over, we're like, okay, go. Start. We've asked them to start with one pack and not like all of the assets at once. But you can expect in February a lot of new, beautiful stuff from the Mad Cartographer. And again, since they are one of the artists who have beautiful stage textures or background images that could be used, we will also work with them on the concept of how to make them work in the editor.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, these new folk that are joining in, obviously they've never worked with paths, because that's unique to DungeonFog, really. So do you have a process of, you said onboarding, do they sort of adapt to that, or?
So first of all, I'm super proud of you that you think that this is absolutely unique to us. There are I know at least one other drawing tool that has something similar. The way that it works, the way that you need to set up paths is kind of, I would say it's not unique to the way that you set it up everywhere, but at least for us, there are some work steps involved that you need to understand. So that is something that I'm going to do tomorrow, is I'm going to show, look, this is how you upload an asset. Well, that's not complicated. It's an image. You drop it here, done, it's uploaded. But then there are things like paths where we say, okay, and this is how you create a path. And then it's up to the artist to decide whether or not they want to adapt to that or not. Now, we are working with Forgotten Adventures very closely on things like that. Like the Paths tool, the initial Paths tool was, we had a lot of concept meetings with Forgotten Adventures because they were, they have a lot of paths and path assets that they want to provide. And they are also working with us, hopefully. Like that is another meeting that's coming up very soon for me, but we're going to sit together this year and we're going to look at what do they need as professional map makers, as professional artists. How can we improve to make the tool even better for them? So long story short is we really try to work. We're not always super fast, which I know the critique also from Forgotten Adventures, who would love to see a lot more tools in there already. But we're doing our best to work with those creators and say, okay, what do you need in the tool to make it a good tool for you? And that's what we're doing. And we're working with Cartographer on the map backgrounds, and we will definitely work with Forgotten Adventures on well, paths and walls and things like that, where we feel like, okay, there's stuff to improve.
Fantastic. Okay, sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, ich spreche sehr gut Deutsch. Danke der Nachfrage.
Yeah, ich do not. Well, if you are a German speaker, then you definitely have heard of OrkenspalterTV, and you're doing something with them as well. What's that?
Yes. So, in the German, like, it's not just Germany or Austria. We're calling it the DACH region, which is Germany, Swiss, and Austria. In that area, once a year, there is the free role-playing day, which in German is der Gratis Rollenspieltag, which is an event where a lot of gaming stores and game rooms, people that organize well, games, they all come together and they are doing this so people can play, test new adventures, test new systems, and we are, as a company, we are invited to contribute. So we sat down with OrkenspalterTV, with Mayri Stritter and Nico, and we said, okay, can we do a little mini adventure? And Mayri came up with a really nice idea. So we are currently in the process of writing this mini adventure. It's going to be in German. I'm sorry, apologies. I'm not sure if I find the time to translate it. Yeah, and that's what we're doing. It's going to be published as part of the Almanac, which is a free publication that comes out to everyone who visits the store. And you can just go into your preferred gaming store, ask them for the GRT Almanac and just grab it. It's for free. And then ideally find a table, sit down and play with friends. And yeah, we're providing, like, we're contributing with, of course, with maps. I'm also contributing in writing. So it's, again, I kind of started enjoying writing, so it's another writing project for me.
Bug has bitten.
Yeah, it has.
Fantastic. All right, so the next collaboration that you're doing, it's got me super excited. As a kid, this was my go-to stuff, my fix when I needed to get away from stuff, was to go and build things and then tear them down and build new things and then tear them down and build new things. And I mean, I say as a kid, I built Castle Grayskull the other day, as a matter of fact. So what am I talking about? Well, Tilden, why don't you be open with us?
Yeah, let me build a bricks bridge. Okay, so here's the thing. Open Bricks, if you don't know who they are a building bricks system that is comparable to Lego. I think it's even compatible with Lego. And
although technically not Lego and not violating any trademark or copyright.
yeah, I actually asked if I'm allowed to say they are similar or comparable to, and I got the permission. So yes, the thing is, they are quite an amazing company, because they have pretty interesting stuff that is out of the ordinary from what we know from Lego, for example. So one of the things that they do is they have magnetic induced LED bricks that you can use to build lit up Lego bricks. Open bricks, construction bricks, which is really cool. Another thing that they do is they are looking at different, well, let's say themes or settings where they can produce their bricks in. And so they approached us before Christmas and they said, hey, would you be interested in doing a collaboration with us? Because we are looking at ways to actually build dungeons or build dioramas for your game night that you could do in Lego. And we said, wow, that sounds amazing. And if you, I need to get out of the way here. But if you look at the picture, that is insane. Like, that's really cool what they did. And up in the screen, it's a bit cut off, is like a dungeon with different rooms. So don't worry about it, guy. The thing is, that sounds really cool. So we said, yeah, sure, that sounds amazing. How can we help? And they said, well, look, you know what? We can print color stuff onto our base plates. So I think, community, you already know where that's going. Because we said, oh, wow, why not? Isn't that just insane? I think that looks so cool. So we are doing, it's a first collaboration. So we said, okay, let's test the waters. Let's see what we can do here. And we're currently working on a little kind of side project with them where we say, okay, they are really, because they are very community driven. Like, if you look up what they're doing, you will see that they do a lot with their communities. Like, there are a lot of, there's a big brick building community, and they are very close to them. They're very in touch with them. So they also have already done a few crowdfunding campaigns for specific sets that are just on high demand. So what we are currently doing is we are currently figuring out what is the best way to get some DungeonFog printed D&D bases out there. And keep your eyes out, keep your ears open, watch Discord, watch our announcements. We are working on doing a map contest where you can submit map ideas or even maps. And we will make some kind of voting where you can vote on the maps that you would like to see, which will then end up on a printed base, most likely available through some kind of crowdfunding. But we will see. That's stuff that we're still working on. And I already know, because we are like, oh, you can do so much with it. We already started thinking about like tiles, dungeon tiles that you could use to lay out your own dungeon. Yeah, we will see. We want to do this first prototype now. We want to do first collaboration, see if everything works out. And then you might hear even more in regards to building your DungeonFog printed open bricks dungeons.
Super exciting. Super exciting. All right, so watch that space, all social media, and we'll let you know as soon as the competition opens, but unfortunately the winner has already been decided. Not saying anything. No, of course not. Okay, so let's move on from all of that. Now, we are going to be talking about the new asset pack that came out. Where did that come from?
That actually came from suggestions from the suggestion board. We were at the end of the year, as always, we were going through the suggestions. We were trying to filter out and see what has been done, what hasn't been done, what needs to be done, what is high on the voting. And a lot of people requested more things that you can use to decorate your walls with. It was actually not that easy to figure out how to make that work. I think Tony did quite a good job on that. It is, however, something where we said, okay, there's a lot of learning process behind that will go into our reworked walls tool once we tackle that one. But yeah, that's where it comes from, and that's what we did, and I hope you can see it. I'm sorry if the image is very small. I'm going to share it on Discord fairly soon. The map pack is already live, so you can already find it. It's called Wall Decorations. It comes with, I'm completely in the way again, let me go here. It comes with several elements, additional elements that you can put on your walls. When you set them above walls, they actually start to shine. And there are archways that you can use to create some kind of center perspective. There are all the things are drawn specifically to work best when you put them above walls onto wall elements. That was the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think they look really, really cool. Now, for those of you that can see there's a little archway there that literally steps out of the page. Looks really, really awesome. Now, to get that effect, how do we do that? Just for folks who are going to see that, go and try and apply it, and then have it being cut off by the wall, or sitting on top of the wall, but we're still seeing the wall underneath it. How did we go about doing that? Hidden wall.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I completely spaced out. Yeah, right. If you want to do that, like that, I can't move my mouse. I can't put it there. That space that guy just pointed at. You create a small segment of the wall with split points, and then hide the wall segment between it. And then just put the archway on top of it.
Very simple, very slick, but sometimes could be a little confusing to try and work out. I can't wait to try this because I think it looks really, really great, and gives you all the benefits of having an open archway. Light will pass through hidden walls and that sort of thing. So wonderful. All right, super, super cool. So as you say, this pack is already live.
It is already live, and I'm going to share that. I haven't shared the map yet, but I'm going to share the map with you guys soon. Just ping me or TM. Kick me on Discord if I forget, and I will put it live so you can see how I made that map work.
Yes, we're talking about changes to the community
spotlight. Yes. Okay.
But that means we have an opening. One moment, please.
Okay,
with music.
Okay.
I don't know where
that
you get your inspiration from. That happened. I'm sorry, everyone. All right, no, that was lovely. Okay, so this community highlight is different this year.
Yes.
What's changed?
Okay, so there are so many great maps out there that it is getting hard to. We only have 12 episodes or 11 episodes of mapping it out. So last year we always featured one artist, and now we're at a point where our list is too long to actually say, okay, that would take us the next 6 years to go through our list of artists that we want to feature. And every time new people come in, so we said, okay, let's change this up a little bit. Let's make a community spotlight that features more than just one artist, that features the newest, hottest, nicest maps that have been released within the recent month. So for January, we have been looking at the community hub, and we basically, all we did was we went to the dashboard. Bodhi did, Chris did, I did. We all went onto the community dashboard, and we said, okay, what's in our stream? What's recommended through the stream to us, which might be artists that I follow or that Bodhi follows, or that are just upvoted by the community. And then let's pick maps from there that we all agreed on were like, okay, those were, it's a personal preference, our highlights. What also changed is everyone who's has been previously last year and everyone who will be featured in the community spotlight also gets this shiny little badge. It has already been distributed. So you guys, if you see your name in the community spotlight today, go and check your hub profile page. The new badge should be waiting for you. Now the super clever ones of you, go now, see if the badge is there, then you know that you will be featured.
You could, but since we're about to talk about them, you'd have to be pretty quick. All right, let's talk about the first one, and that would be Forest Path with Gate by the Grey Man.
Yeah, it's a lovely map, isn't it? The first time I looked at it, I was like, is that actually done in DungeonFog? And then we looked at it and we said, yeah, it is. But the way that the brushes work, the way that the color balance is it's so smooth. It feels like I felt like it feels like a completely hand-drawn map. And then also the neat trick with the shadows at this Palisade Bridge or Palisade Gateway. Yes. It's a really cool map. I think it's also a really versatile map because you can use that as a random encounter map. You can use that as an ambush map. There's a lot you can do with it. So I think it's
really cool.
It deserves its spot in the community spot.
I also like the fact that the shadows are consistent. They always, the sun is definitely to the northwest of the map, shining towards us. Underneath those trees as well. Really cool. Okay, the Grey Man. Go check out their community page and follow them. Next up,
I can't read the name.
Ancient Ruined Bridge by Gilded Freya.
Yeah, Gilded Freya. Right. It was super hard to pick the best map because that artist has a lot of great maps. It was in the stream and it was the most recent one, so it made the cut. But I can highly recommend that you follow, like the previous one, that you follow Gilded Freya, because there are really cool maps in there. It's a broken, like it's a ruined bridge. Again, super cool to have as a random encounter when people are traveling alongside a river or alongside the coast. I think it's super interesting because of the potential of battle taking place between water and the bridge and the land. So there are just so many opportunities you can do, and I think it's executed really nicely. Also with the sunken elements of old ruins that are beneath the water space. So yeah, it's again, it's a great map. I can see a lot of potential in there for every home game. So go grab it and follow all the artists because they often come with more maps that are really cool.
Then we have The Abandoned Town Foggy by Spooky Ghost.
Yeah, I think the name and the map work together brilliantly. We have seen in the past month, we have seen a lot of town maps. which actually has probably an impact on some of the assets that we are doing as one of the monthly prop packs in the future. I think this is from the atmosphere. It's a super nice. Again, I'm not sure if that's because I'm in the mood today, or if that was the thought process through all the maps. But again, I think if you need a small village that you run across that is kind of creepy, that might be even a random encounter or like a random location that you roll through on your travel table. That one is super cool because I think the moment your players step into or onto that map, they're like, uh-oh, where have we ended up here? It's a nice one. And also, again, executed really good with the brushes and the paths and the fog and the lighting. The whole color concept is quite well balanced, I think.
It looks like there was one survivor at the very least of the town, because someone dug those open graves and didn't fill them up. So,
Bom, bom, bom.
Bom, bom, bom. Spooky Ghost. Next we have Terranil Throne Room by Ixwarf.
Yeah, it's
10th Wharf. I'm not sure. Ixwarf, 10th Wharf.
Well, I don't know either. It is. It's a well executed throne room. I think the color concept, the way that assets and like hue, saturation, color balance, all of that, it really feels good. It's a bit small. I'm not sure how much of a combat you can do in the throne room, but if you need that moment where your party steps up to the throne and gets rewarded and gets, I don't know, get rewarded their own little kingdom, that is, I think, a nice picture or a nice map to put onto that storytelling part. So yeah, it's a throne room.
Yeah. Lovely. I do like the consistency of color. It definitely gets this emerald feel, this sort of greens and that sort of thing. And then we have Guard Commander's Home by Black John.
Yeah. Another open like outdoor map, which again I think is really cool. It is quite a big map, so the image is not representing the size of it. Which I think makes an interesting long distance combat or exploration map. It has, I'm really curious. It has a label flying there saying
Romero's Villa.
Yeah, Romero's Villa. Now if you look at the building, I'm not sure if that is an ironic title because it's a two-room fisherman's. Maybe Romero calls it his villa. Apparently, it's a guard commander who lives there, and he always dreamt of having a villa. So he said, "Well, I have 2 rooms, but I'm still calling it a villa." Or I don't know. Unfortunately, we don't know the true story behind it. I would be super curious to learn more about it. So if you're watching, let me know in Discord. I would love to know what was the idea behind Romero's Villa, naming it and then looking like that. But yeah, it's a cool map, well executed and really beautiful. So go grab it.
There we go. All right. Those were the 5 maps for this month. Fantastic work, everybody. And a reminder, go and find them on the Community Hub and follow them and get hold of all of these wonderful maps. I know I certainly will be doing that after the show. Right, that brings us to the end of the DungeonFog Battlemap Editor segment of tonight's show. DEIOS is up next, where we've got demos and cities. We'll be back after this brief little break. Don't go anywhere.
What's got you down, Ogre?
It's my dungeon, Gobbler.
What's wrong with it?
It could be so much more, you know? With more stuff.
It can't be that bad. Let me have a look. No, you've got a nice swamp full of snakes and spicks. Ah, snakes and spikes. Very nice.
But, I mean, that's it. How am I supposed to attract adventurers with that?
2 words. Dungeon fog.
Dungeon what?
Dungeon fog.
For over 3 years, we have put all our love and determination into making DungeonFog the best battle map making tool out there. Thanks to you, our amazing community, Game Masters can pick from over 10,000 community-created and shared maps, and can turn them into their own epic dungeons to use and share. None of this would have been possible without you. Thank you. And may our tools always help you to create maps your players will never want to leave unexplored.
So, what do you think, Gobbler?
Well, it certainly is different. Different.
And we're back with Project DEIOS. Folks, I have to tell you that when I saw the slides this morning, I was like, oh, yes. So I hope you are as enthusiastic as I am. Now, if you have just joined us, because some folks just join us for the DEIOS, welcome to the show. And remember, if you have a question, type the word question in caps so that I can see what the question is, and we'll take it from there. Now, Till, of course, is with me. We're talking roadmap for 2023 as the year kicks off. We're also talking about a new asset pack update for DEIOS, and of course, a city map demo of bits and pieces that go into making a city, as well as an explanation, I would say, a very comprehensive explanation on everything that you could possibly want to know with regards to the city builder. And so there we are. Till, let's talk roadmap for 2023.
Sure. Sorry,
No,
it's
Is
fine.
this another slide that got removed?
Yeah,
Till?
I switched the slides around. My bad. Sorry. Okay. Roadmap 2023. So, we have started in December. We've already switched gears and we have started on working on the city map editor. Which means that we are currently in the process of working out the prototypes, the ideas, the concepts, the way that we want to put all the things together. We're analyzing what can we use from the world mapping, what can we bring over into city map making, what needs to be added on top of that, and how are we going to find all the synergies to really get this project moving along. So I've split it up in short-term things that are happening and long-term things that are happening. On the short-term list, of course, we have the city map prototyping. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to test our concepts in a secluded environment that is a developer's environment. That's not the DEIOS application. It's an external environment where we can really quickly throw together things, play with them, test them, until we really have an understanding of, is that the right approach? And we're going to talk about those concepts and the approaches to that in today's stream. And once we're done with the tool, then we're like, okay, I think the concept works in the prototype environment, so let's bring it over into DEIOS. So for the first quarter, we will most likely be just playing around at developing in the prototype environment. And then we will slowly, once the tool is developed, we will bring it over, which means that at the current state, it is not very predictable on when this is going to happen. When is it brought over? So when can we open a tool for you to test it? Which means that the city map alpha is currently still sitting on the long-term side of the roadmap, but that is eventually going to change the second we have a better understanding of what can we do, how and when. We will slowly progress things into the right roadmap planning. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is, since we are focusing on the city map editor for at least for the first half of the year with priority, is that the world map editor will just be improved through your crash reports, your bug fix reports. So we will do constant bug fixing. We will do stability updates and improvements to the world map editor, and we will release new asset packs. But in terms of tools development, we want to have our board clean at the moment to focus on map making, city map making. And once we are done with that and happy with that, we will then circle back and continue on the world map editor. So in long term, you can see that there is city map alpha and world map version 2, and then of course Battlemap integration.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, when you talk about link to world maps, have you guys thought about how we're going to interface from the world map editor into the city map editor?
Well, there are currently two concepts there, and we will eventually have to decide which one works better for us. The one is basically a pin system where you can place a pin for you as the map creator, as the game master. You can place a pin, and within that pin is the link or the reference to the other map. So once you click it, it will load the new map to you and eventually the viewers. Or if there are probably clever ways, and I think I really like the idea, but we'll have to test if it's feasible or not, is that you can underlie, like on a world map, for example, you have a city token that you place there. So what you do is you place the same link information, like you underline that token with the map information, but automatically on using your mouse wheel, zooming in. Once you go beyond the lowest zoom threshold, it will load up that area automatically. And I don't know, like it sounds like a nice concept. It also sounds like something that you really hate when you're currently working on details around a city and you zoom in too much and you're like, oh, no, I wanted to get back to the city map. So it's just something that is on the concept board, but not on the, it hasn't been tested yet.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, something to think about. And I think that I saw a question in chat about cities zoomed in. And I think you raised a valid point there. Because certainly when I'm working on the world maps, I do zoom in. And if you suddenly zoom in and suddenly pop, 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 you're like in city, it's like, no. Zoom out. At what threshold does it switch? So interesting things. I mean, again, this is why you've got prototyping and alpha and all kind of stuff. So where are we in terms of the art assets for city?
We have a test pack from Keora. He created a bunch of assets for us that we can work with. But similar to what we did with the world maps, that is a back and forth between Keora and us, where he has given us a first pack of city assets that we can use for prototyping. We can work with that. But he needs to look at the way that maps feel and look to then say, okay, and now I know what the right art style is. So we're looking at the first alpha will most likely come with the base pack, which is kind of our development pack at the beginning. And the second we know that nothing is going to change drastically on the way that maps look and feel, it will again be when Kiora goes and says, okay, now I'm drawing the right assets for it, the final assets for it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so that's, I think, enough with regards to the roadmap. Now, if we go a slide backwards, we'll be talking about the new asset pack update.
Well, yeah.
Right, wrong way, this way. Right,
yeah,
there
sorry.
We go. So, yes.
The reason I put the slide in front was because I was like, okay, oh, by the way, guys, don't miss it. Yesterday, we have released the latest patch. You can find the patch notes in our changelogs. But if you launch Project DEIOS, you will see that you should have a self-updater update in your application. And when you launch it, give it some time because it needs to download the new asset pack as well and then install, and it should come back up automatically. If you're having problems, as always, get the latest version from the from the account manager. Just log into deios.dungeonfog.com and grab the latest version from there. The latest patch is now featuring the newest asset pack, and it comes along with another bunch of stability hotfixes and performance updates that were reported from you to us over the course of December.
Awesome. So now we're going to have a look at that asset pack, which
Right.
is Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, very pretty Cyberpunk.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I really wanted to create a map for you today because I actually have an idea what I want to do. But it was quite a hectic day. So I couldn't find the time to sit down and create my little peninsula with cyberpunk cities and the kind of jungle out area that is with abandoned and ruined cities that probably fallen through some nuclear fallout. I don't know. I would have really enjoyed making that map, but I couldn't find the time. So it's up to you to play around with it and create that map in the first place. I think this is, I'm not sure, but it feels like a world first. I don't think that there are many other like map making tools out there that actually offer a cyberpunk setting. So we are really proud of that. That was voted by the community, by the Kickstarter backers, when we did the setting voting, and we were super excited when we saw that it makes the cut in the voting. So now it's finally there, and I can't wait to get your feedback on our Discord. What do you think about it? What would you like to see changed? Is there anything that is missing that we need to relay to Kiora? It's an amazing pack. Just have fun exploring.
Absolutely. I think I think it might very well be a world first because I'm trying to think of the other pieces of software that I know of. So Verdigris SC says that's a lot of magenta for Cyberpunk. But now we know that DEIOS is heading towards being able to change individual colors, right?
Yes. So every asset is built of at least 3 layers, which is a base layer, a primary color layer, then there might be a secondary and a tertiary color layer to it, and then the line art layer. So once we cycle back, we're going for the city map maker. We're going to also already implement it, but because we need to develop that color change system. And once we cycle back to world maps, we can carry this over from the city maps into the world maps, which means you can then touch each layer and recolor it.
Another question from Patrick McHugh is, are city assets going to be the same theme as the world assets? So high fantasy, Age of Sail, Cyberpunk, etc.
There's definitely going to be, well, of course, there's going to be a fantasy pack. I had the conversation with Kiora, and we'll have to kind of continue that conversation this year. I think he made quite a fair point where he said, okay, I cannot do 100 or 150 buildings for each setting. So would it make more sense to have 400 buildings for one setting and then release the other ones later through the marketplace, or spread thin and have only a few unique buildings per setting? And to be honest, there is no answer to that yet. That is something that Kiora and I have to figure out. And if we get the feeling that we can't find the answer ourselves, then we will definitely do a polling on Discord or on Kickstarter to get your opinion.
Makes sense, because I think something that we're seeing is that there's so many assets that you can come up with, and the more you have, the stronger the image looks. But to have less almost weakens it in a way. So
it's like it's not a question about will I get it now or never. It's just a question of what's part of the first implementation, and then there will be a marketplace where you can grab more of that stuff. And if you remember, there is the content subscription, which means a lot of that stuff might be already included.
Yeah, exactly. So Never Seb asked the question, will there be a sci-fi theme as well? So I think that's been answered. Now, Till, can you give us a hint of what's coming up, or is that top secret?
The next asset pack that's coming up, it's top secret. No, I think I haven't asked Kiora yet. I have a call with Kiora next week. No, I can't remember. Probably this week. And we said we sit together and talk a little bit about cities and catch up. Because there was a lot going on over December and into January, so I haven't had the time to talk to Kiora. And then I will know. I cannot tell you because I don't know either. We will see.
Okay. Well, I think we have delayed it long enough. Let's talk about the city map maker. Now, folks, this is one of the things that you don't really get to see behind the scenes of, but Till and I meet in the morning to discuss the script and what's going to be spoken about and all that sort of thing. And today was one of those ones where Till went, yeah, there's city map maker stuff, but I can't show you because it's stuff and there's things. And I don't know if it's interesting. I'm like, what do you mean? Of course it's interesting. It's amazing. We put it in. He's like, is this too much? I was going, no, give us everything. So if it's too long, it's my fault. But I got super, super excited about this whole thing. So here we go. Till.
Yes. Okay, first of all, No. I'll tell you when. First of all, I love you, Guy. I'm super impressed how excited you are about this. Guys, please calm down. The city map maker is between concept and prototyping phase. For those of you who are now sitting at the edge of this seat and like, oh, I can see how cities are being drawn. No, we're not there yet. We will talk about the concepts. What I said was, well, does it make sense to talk about the conceptual parts that are being discussed and developed in the back end, like behind the scenes? And is it interesting to see how such a working prototype in such a secluded prototype environment look like? And Guy said, yes. So that's why we're here. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're talking about how do we approach the whole city map making part? What do we do there? What are the thought processes? We don't have all the answers yet. So there are some things that we're still evaluating and figuring out what would be the best approach. And to start that off, I'm sorry, you're looking.
I'm just laughing because of chat. Nestorillo Moody says, always listen to what the great GM proposes. Elias Venari. Yes, it has sense. It is interesting, and we could give feedback on this. This is one of the most unique tools DEIOS have, and I would love to be involved on it as much as I can.
There you go. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's look at the concept. I think you need to flip the
Yes,
page. So this is actually to pick you up where we are. This is the current state. We are refining our concepts, and we're building for each concept step. We are building where we feel like, okay, we need to understand how that actually performs and behaves. We are building a little prototype in a secluded environment. And once we like the prototype and we feel like that's the right direction, then we will again refine it probably a bit, and then eventually bring it over into the main application. So terrain brush and assets and textures have been checked off because we already have working terrain in the world map editor. So it's not a question of, is it technically possible? It's more a question of what's the right user flow to implement that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideas that we have here once we get on the next slide. So roads tool, district tool, and growth brush are the things that are currently in our secret lab and are brewing and are being tested. So that's what we're looking at the moment. Right, next slide. Concept. Well, yeah, okay, I think you got it. We're going into concept. So the way we approached city map making was that we said, okay, how do we need to wrap our mind around the whole thing? And the answer is, I think our answer is at least, before you can do a map of a city, you actually need to understand what the terrain is, because we are going to see that the terrain is highly influential on how that city will look like at the end. So here you can see, I'm not sure if you can read it behind my head, the elevation is important factor for the city founding. So where do we put buildings? For the road dynamics and for the usable space in total. When we talk about usable space, we think of where can you put your houses, where can you put your farmland, where can you put production sites, and trade, which means that we need to think about height maps. Well, here you go. We have height maps. We have a height map concept already implemented in the world map editor, so we can use that concept and bring it over into city maps already. Terrain shaping. There is an early version of that available in the world map editor, but I think this is now a good spot to look at that and see if we can improve it. What's the next one? Water bodies. Well, here's an interesting one. Of course, if you look at city maps, and actually we did quite thorough research on fantasy, at least, city maps that are out there. Most of them are built with a river in the map, or a coast, or some weird peninsula state. So because it is understandably aesthetical to have a combination of water and land, but of course, because I think history has shown us that it is practical to build cities or towns near water bodies. Now, when you look at the existing concepts that we have for the world map editor, it is on a city map level, it is basically a reversion of what we have. Because in the world map, you have a water map, like a water stage, and you shape, you mold land masses through the landmass tool. Now, for city maps, what we are looking and what we are testing is, can we reverse the idea? Can we say, okay, for city maps, you have land, but you are molding and shaping the water bodies, which would, again, I mean, we're trying to be efficient here, which would also allow us to say, okay, we can actually use the same technologies to give you tools to shape water bodies the same way that you shaped dynamic coastlines for world maps. There you go. Okay, So let's assume that you have, and I think that is what I'm trying to convey here is you should think about the terrain first, which means you need the tools to shape the terrain before you start city map making. And the reason why is, I think on the next slide. Exactly, because if you look at the terrain that we have here, how would settlers look at it to actually create the city? Now, this is my take. This is where I was looking at the terrain and I said, okay, what would I do? Well, we can see that we have this this kind of darker green elevation, which could reflect a hill or a mountain. Then we have the water with the coast, and then we have more or less flat land. Which means that if I would be looking at this spot and I'm a settler, I would probably go like, okay, if I want to have a harbor, it should be where the river goes into the ocean or the lake. I probably have some good, sorry, wrong finger. I probably have some good fishing spots here. The best place to put a keep, a watchtower, some defensive position would be on the hill, which is the stronghold place that I marked there. And then I might have forests, and from the hill, I could probably even get stone. So I have building and construction resources on the top. And if I want to put my farmland, I would probably not put it near the coast, but I would put it land in, because that might be better protected from winds and from flooding and from whatsoever. So looking at that, I think knowing what the terrain offers is a strong start to build a believable settlement. What's your take on that, Guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the head as you were explaining it to me. I was listening, going, but what about, this cities grow based on the first structure, which is usually a tavern or a trading point or something, and then they grow from there. And he's
exactly.
Like, I've got that. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
So till just before we go forward, there was a question. Elias Vernieri asks, could we import the terrain from the world map to the city map? Well, that's a given, right? Or am I being silly?
No, well, probably that is something that we need to understand better, because if you think of the difference in scale, the zoom level is I think you can zoom down to a 10 kilometers area. Now the height map that we did to not completely kill the application is also balanced to stretch over, I think, 10 to 15 kilometers, which means that if you import the height map from the world map, you basically have, it might be a decline, but that's it. If we're talking about height maps. Now, if we're talking about the coastline shapes, right? We would love to do it, but we'll actually have to test it and see how it works, because I'm not sure if it is actually convenient to do it. Or if it wouldn't be better to just say, okay, here you go. You can still kind of probably blueprint or overlay it somehow and then trace your own bits and pieces. Experience will show. We all think it should be there, but we all have our reservations whether or not it will actually technically work.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely
so
makes sense.
You just said something super interesting, which I came to the same conclusion, or we had a chat beforehand, and I was like, yeah, I think Guy's right. If you look at the first year, let's say, of settlement, I think this is what it would look like. The keep would be under construction, so that would be something that is being constructed on the hill, while you have a warehouse somewhere, probably not up the hill with the keep, but somewhere where it's easy accessible. And then construction workers would have built their little townhouses or shacks where it is convenient, which means close to the construction, close to the tavern that might be there. And we have a little construction building at the foothill of at the foot of the hill. We have a little wood chopper's hut in the forest, and then we have some minor huts for fishing or if there actually is material shipped in, and that would be it, right?
Makes sense.
That's how that city would actually start before it grows and expands. And now we're looking at the first tools that we actually need, because I mean, obviously we need a props tool where you can place down props. That's a given. You want to have eventually a biome tool where you can draw a forest and it creates a forest. But the first new element here that we wanted to look at and understand better is the roads tool. Because I'm not sure what happens when you push the next slide.
Just before we do that, before you get onto the roads tool, just to be clear, this is not screen grabs from the working demo. These are mock-ups that you have made.
Yes,
and
this
do
is
not represent what the city map
no.
software
This
would look
is
like in this slide.
yeah.
Just
I'm
to be
sorry.
clear.
I should have put a little disclaimer somewhere. Those are mock-ups using the assets that Keora gave us for prototyping, and just because we're having a lot of conversations about that. I would say we've spent about, well, probably 3 days in total over December looking at all those components, discussing it. What you're seeing at the moment is kind of the comprised version of all the conversations that were going on. And I tried to bring it into a format that helps me to explain where our thought process are going. This is actually done, I think, in Google Sheets presentation, where you can quickly shift around things. Some of it is in Photoshop, some of it is in Google Sheets, but this is not a working DEIOS prototype. You're looking at mock-ups, at conceptual screens. And now we're talking, and now we're talking about the roads concept. And as always, we're trying to find an efficient way to do things, to save some time. Because obviously what we could do is we could hand you a brush that draws a road. And we say, hey, there you go. That's your road. Have fun with it. And then here's your prop tool. Take your buildings, place them down, have fun with it. But that's not the most efficient way. We think it makes more sense to have a roads tool that auto-populates with buildings as you draw the road. And of course, there will be settings like you can see it here above my head, settings like on which side of the road should be buildings. Should it be on one side or the other, or should it be on both sides? On both sides. And what's the offset between buildings? What's the random distribution? All those things can be controllable. That's not really the point. The point is that we think the easiest way to quickly draw a city is to have a roads tool that gives you the chance to populate buildings alongside the road while you draw the road. So that was a premise that I presented to the team, and I said, look, this is what I want. Let's discuss if that makes sense, which again goes to you as well. Let's discuss if that makes sense or not. And then break it down. And I think in the following slides, this is basically breaking it down and making it understandable for the developers and for us as a working document where we can look at the concepts, which means I don't want a road that renders buildings. I want a road that places buildings. So I can, once I've done that, I can select them. It poses a question to us that we will still need to understand, and that is, can we do that on the fly? We are doing it to some extent already with the rivers in the world map editor, because the rivers have a cut-through option that cut through existing props to create a path. So if we are doing a freely adjustable road, and you adjust the road, you change the road, it will cut through buildings. which means that we can automatically remove those buildings. The question is, can we bring them back? What happens if you mess around with a lot of roads on your map? How can you repopulate them? So that is something that we still need to investigate. But the idea is that you draw a road, it populates with the buildings, and you then can select each building, delete it, replace it with a different one, and so on and so forth. Next slide is, I think, about editing the, oh yeah, it's super small. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but the road has little handles, which means it's a path. Again, you can touch each point and modify it. We are, next slide, we are thinking about ways where you can create crossroads. So if you select a point, or if you add a point, you can select it, create a crossroad, which is a forking. We have been talking about forking in the rivers tool. We paused that, but we will come back to it in the city map tool, because we think forking, well, for roads, it's unavoidable. That's what they do. There you see, the second you draw it down, it intersects with a building there, which means we have to remove the building, but it also means we can test whether or not there is space for more buildings to be added, which I think is the next slide. Exactly. And then there is a decision point of how the tool should work. I personally think the priority is a point-click system, where you click, set a point, click next point, and we connect. Because roads tend to be efficient, which means, if possible, straight. If not possible, then due to terrain. But that means that if you place a point here and place a point there, we can factor in the terrain, because we have a height map, so we can auto curve it already, making it fit the terrain. So point click system, I think, is the best one, but there should always be an option for a freehand mode too. So this is what this town would look like if you would just use the roads tool and populate buildings alongside the road. Now, it's not super exciting, but it is a first approach, and I think it is the right approach for some of map makers who like to conceptualize, visualize cities through the road artery system. And here is where I can now show you, and again, don't get super excited. This is prototyping at its purest, but this is where we currently are experimenting with ways on how to set the parameters, how to make it work, which means that I will have to
shift.
Yes, you give me a countdown.
All right, 3, 2.
Oh
1.
my God! Well, that's too fast.
Okay.
Where's
it gone?
Yeah. Now you can give me a countdown.
3, 2, 1, shift.
I'm here. Yes. Okay, so roads prototype. Let's open that one up. So this is what we've been playing around, which basically comes down to, okay, you are drawing a road, and we can already populate buildings. As you can see, they are not randomly distributed yet, but they all, I can't remember how to activate that. They are all centered and angled towards the road, which means that if we have buildings that have the information where the entry is, they can already look with the entry at the road. And it is like, if I want to quickly create a district, there's no intersections yet. We're not detecting whether or not buildings are intersecting each other, but that is a super quick way to actually create a district. And again, this is our testing environment. So the next thing that's happening in the testing environment would be to make the, it's not working at the moment, make the point click system and see how those corners behave if you make a point click system like this. This next thing is, how can we, what modifiers do we have to adjust the offsets to kind of naturally distribute buildings here. It's very mechanical at the moment. They're just, as you can see, they're oriented toward their touch point, like their building center point. And once we're happy with that, we're basically there, because this we can then replace with the according textures for the roads, which can be cobblestone roads or dirt roads or brick roads or whatsoever. And this will be populated with buildings. And that's why we're doing it in a test environment first, so we can focus on the important variables, cut out all the rest, and then we're bringing it in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And there's still more. It looks like a straight road in San Francisco.
There you go.
Oh,
for you.
Look at that.
Okay,
all right, let's
I think we need to switch back. Yes.
Yep. 3, 2, 1, switch. Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
Let me bring you back here so I can see you guys. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Right. Okay, so now we're in the next part, which is the artery system, because I think drawing roads is cool, but actually, as someone who has tried to do city maps, making the road artery system look right is the hardest part, at least for me. That's where I think most will struggle with, is to get the right feeling of how would main roads, boulevards, alleyways, how would they distribute? How would that grow? So for us, the next step is, I think the roads tool, again, is a given. We want that. We need that. It is super to connect one village with the other and grow together there. But how can we streamline and optimize the process of creating such a road artery system? And we have two different concepts here. And the first, but before we go into them, let's talk a little bit about road economy. That is how we're calling it, because we're saying by the information that the road gives us, we can, or we could, and again, that's open for discussion. I don't know if you agree with me or if you think that's utterly stupid, but we think we can draw information from the size of the road. And that is, for example, that the bigger a road is, the more important the buildings will be alongside that road. The more intersections, or where a road intersects with another, and that depends on, does a boulevard intersect with a boulevard, or does a boulevard intersect with an alleyway? But where those intersections happen, those buildings will be usually more valuable and therefore interesting, or of higher economic value. So we can do something with that information. And let me quickly, because it's I'm looking at a small screen and I cannot read it. What is it? Road size effects. Yeah. So, and lastly, the size of the road can also affect the material that the road is made of, because usually I would say the bigger road gets, or let's say in this economy distribution, the more value the road has, the better the building material. So we could say, okay, boulevards will not be dirt boulevards, whereas alleyways will be more like dirt alleyways. So we could generate auto recommendations for the texture based on the size, like, again, the value, the width of the road itself. Yes, so that is something that just goes on in our heads when we think about, okay, how can we build a road artery system? And that brings us to one of the concepts, and it is kind of, it's not competing, but there is a value difference. We don't really know which one could be the better one yet. We'll have to test it. We'll have to play around with it. And that's the district tool and the growth brush tool. Both have their merits. We will see which one works better or which one gets favorited, also from your feedback. So the district tool, you know that from our initial Kickstarter animations, this is where we say, okay, actually you could create a city just by looking at the districts. Instead of looking at each road, you define districts and we populate each district with sub-artery roads and buildings automatically. And that's what you see here. If you break that city down into districts, it would actually look like this. And suddenly we are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shapes. So thinking about drawing all those roads manually or defining 7 shapes and then let the computer do the rest, I think is, in terms of efficiency, already a huge step forward. So here's the concept that we've been discussing on how could that actually happen, which means, again, it's a point-click system or a draw system. So you're drawing the outline of the district. And from drawing the outline of the district, we can already derive some information. We can say, I mean, that's what we're doing at the moment in the concept. We just declare that the road around the district is the most important road. So we declare that as a boulevard. It gets intersected with, can't remember how we called those, main roads. And main roads then get intersected by alleyways. So that's kind of the distinction that we currently have. So how are we doing that? What is the technical approach for it? And Andre and Ilya, who are currently working on that, came up with, I think, a really clever way, which is at the moment, that is for change. We don't know if we stick with it, but for now we're using a Voronoi diagram to populate that area. Because a Voronoi diagram creates a pattern that is very close to what those back alleys and side streets would look like. And I think that's a nice approach to auto-populating districts. Because as you can see, so if you don't know what a Voronoi diagram is, it's the yellow lines that you can see in the back, which are basically creating a polygon pattern. And that is relatively cheap to create and to populate in there. And all those lines, those vector lines that are connecting the pattern, they are our templates for potential roads. So we can randomize where a road grows, and we can apply certain rules that say a main road has to evolve from a boulevard road, and an alleyway, or we can even give it percentages. We can say a main road, in 75% of chances, a main road evolves from a boulevard road, and in 65% an alleyway evolves from a main road, and so on and so forth. So there are ways that we can prime the algorithms in a way that create those randomly, which again means that once it is created randomly, it should be adjustable. You want to go in there and say, well, I don't like that road, or I would like to turn that road into a main road. I would like to get rid of that connecting road, or even the boulevard that is encompassing the whole thing. And so there's a point where you create it, and then again, same problem with the roads before. Either you convert it to make it editable, or it is auto-editable, but that means that you can, just by adjusting things, you can break it and delete buildings when you shift around. So that is, again, that's up for use in terms of internal UX testing to understand what works best.
And I think, before you carry on, that solves a lot of the questions that chat are having in terms of, oh, but district roads sometimes run straight through an area, not around it. There's boulevard roads. Of course, you can go in and change it. Yeah. So, Till, you mentioned that there were two approaches, district,
yes.
Now we're going into growth, which is
yes,
the
growth,
other approach.
is another approach, and it's the most complex one. We have a little prototype for that we're going to look at, but it's also a bit complicated to explain. I'm doing my best to explain it. Think about the way that a tree grows, right? You have a main branch, but from that main branch, it automatically sprawls the side branches. So think of a roads tool that you draw, and while you draw the roads tool, it's just a simple road. But when you take the growth brush and you you pump energy into the road, it starts to spread out, because that's where population starts to settle down. So they need to use that space. So they will start to build main roads, artery roads, and alleyways. And as you pump energy into that segment of the map, it will start to grow. And
like
two things
virus.
like a virus. Yeah. Well, that's mankind, isn't it? Sorry. But two things happen. A, it starts to space out because it needs more space. But B, you're putting more, let's say, more economic wealth into the center that you're pushing energy into, which means that what is in the center will start to become wealthier and wealthier. So the buildings will change. I think it's a super interesting concept. And it even is combinable with the roads tool and the districts tool.
I think so too.
But it is a bit more complicated. So this is definitely something that would sit a lot longer in the prototyping area until we're happy with it and we feel like, okay, that's working.
You've got a demo, you say?
Yeah, I have got a demo for it.
And should we switch?
Yes, give me a minute. I have to again shift my screens around. And we can switch whenever you say so.
3, 2, 1, switch.
Welcome to the Stars universe. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a first concept that we are currently experimenting with when it comes to the growth brush and the Voronoi diagram. And the best way to show it is to start just right away. So where my mouse cursor is, I can start to place down and it starts to grow outward, right? So just by putting it there, it has built, and it's not accurate, but at least it's an interesting road artery system. Yeah. This is just purely because we're using the concept of the Voronoi diagram to play around with it. We would eventually have to use a different graph to understand how those roads really grow. But wherever I start to place down, we can see that the city is forming around it. So if I want to bring it together, as you can see, as I move my mouse, it starts to grow together, which is super interesting because you can see that if you're doing that in a specific area like a district, it would start to grow in that district. And eventually it will subdivide and create sub-arteries in there. That's currently not working, but that's where we're currently working on. And B, if I would, I can, so now let me, what was it? I think that was it. Let me refresh it. B, I can place, currently I can already place points. And those points, for those of you who know what a Voronoi diagram is, means that every line will try to find the right spacing between those points. So if I create something like this, and then a second line here, and something like this, we will see. Ideally, what should happen is I'm creating some, oh, no, I need to actually, oh, I've broken it. I think now it's working. I can create a district here, and I can create a district here. And now if I go here, we should see, come on, grow it. growing, we should see something like a concept of a connecting road that is starting to form here. And again, this is like a really rough prototype, but it helps us a lot to think in those spaces at the moment and experiment with them. Another thing I can show you is we're always talking about like medieval growing cities, but we also have the concept of planned cities. So I can, of course, also switch the Voronoi or the graph that we're using to more like a grid style that will actually create cities that are much more planned, right? And we can connect them. So this is a combination. Currently, we are still experimenting with the growth brush primarily because we think if we can pull that one off, we will be really cool. But it is also kind of laying the groundwork for the way the districts tool will work. So if we can pull off the growth brush to the extent that we think we could, the district tool might be even secondary in priority. If we feel like, okay, this is too much experimenting, the district tool is quite mapped, we understand how it works, then we will switch over, we'll leave the growth brush, and we will start working on the districts tool. So for at least February, we want to experiment more with that before in March we will then start to actually put things into the application, because by ideally May or June, we want to hand the first prototype to you guys. So that leaves us with February to really do just prototype experiments, March to refine experiments, and then April, May to put them into the application. And there's still a lot to do with the application. Like a lot of things need to be preset and updated to make that work. So don't take it for granted that we can hit June for a first alpha, but that's what we're currently aiming at.
Let's switch till.
Yep.
3, 2, 1, switch. Sorry. All right. That brings us to the end of a very long first episode for 2023.
Oh, yeah,
but
right. 2 hours, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Nice.
think you will all agree with me.
Well, I
that
owed
it
you
was
guys, sorry, I owed you an hour from December, so it's fine that we...
There you go.
Yeah.
You paid it back. Lovely. So I think you all agree with me that this definitely was a very exciting, very interesting kind of space. If it was, hit that like button, of course, and leave your comments. You want more of this deep diving behind the scenes kind of stuff, or
Yeah, let
maybe
us
it was
know.
just too much for you?
Yeah, just leave us feedback. Also, not today because it's late here and I've been working since 6 in the morning. I will get some food. I haven't had that one today. And then I will just drop dead. But if you want to engage a discussion with us, with the developers, into what you've seen today, just hop over on Discord. We have a whole segment which is World Map discussions, where you can just talk about what you've seen, ask questions if your question hasn't been answered today, or if you feel like you would like to get more out of it. Join us on Discord. We would love to chat with you about those things.
Absolutely. So we will be back at the end of February for another update and behind the scenes dive into the world of DEIOS as well as the Battlemap Editor. So until then, all that remains for me to do is to say, Till, thank you for sharing all of the insights with us tonight, as well as for those wonderful demos. Thank you to you for being...
pleasure.
Thank you to you for watching all the way through to the end, and for your amazing questions. Really appreciate that. And for those of you that I didn't answer your questions, either they'd been answered earlier in the show and you may have missed them because you joined late, or perhaps they were answered as Till was kind of going. I think a lot of that sort of thing happened, or there was just no scope for it to be asked. Anyway, we will be back in a month's time. Until then,
happy map making!